Hey everyone, this is Libertarian Black Man. I want to talk about the Interlock Controversy that is going on in Michigan right now. And that is the result of something that happened earlier in the year and has led to new bills that have been proposed to change the way that vehicles are operated. Back in January, we had a very sad situation take place with a Michigan family. The Abbas family, pictured here, a family of 5, was killed in a drunk driving crash. They were vacationing in Florida and they were riding back home, and in Kentucky some guy got drunk, got behind the wheel and drove the wrong way down the highway, smashing into the vehicle carrying this family. So in response to that tragedy, U.S. Representative Debbie Dingell introduced a bill back in January to require that new cars be equipped with interlock devices to prevent intoxicated driving. And the in-vehicle devices measure a driver's blood alcohol before they may start the car, and they're already mandated in some states for those convicted of driving under the influence. So in response to this tragedy, we have a legislator doing what unfortunately way too many legislators do. They try to change the entire law, the entire system, to make sure that this never happens again. A well-intentioned idea, but often does more harm than good, or does very little good to begin with. So under the bill that is proposing mandated interlock devices, it is also looking to lower the legal limit for intoxication. It is 0.05 right now in Michigan, and they want it's 0.08 in Michigan and 0.08 throughout the country in order to legally drive. Once you go over, you are legally intoxicated and guilty of DUI, driving under the influence. The bill requiring interlock devices wants to bring the legal limit down to 0.05. So that, in fact, you not only have to blow into a breathalyzer, but your alcohol content cannot be above 0.05 if this bill passes. Now, what are interlock devices? These are devices that require a driver to perform an action that enables the ignition to start a vehicle. So actions can include buckling seatbelts, exhaling into a breathalyzer machine, closing doors, etc. And these are intended as a safety measure to prevent drivers from operating vehicles if an action is not performed. If any one of those things is not done, you will not be able to start your car. We've had a go-around of these of the interlock situation before. Installation of seatbelt interlock devices were mandated for the first time back by the Department of Transportation for all vehicles back in 1973, meaning that the DOT, Department of Transportation, required the automobile industry to install devices that required you as the driver and or passenger to buckle your seatbelt before you could start your vehicle. Now, this law would fail only a few months after being enacted because of issues that came with the mandate. Seatbelt interlock devices meant you had to buckle up the driver's seat and passenger seat in order to move the car out of the garage to wash it. Most people, when they wash their car, they move it in the driveway. They don't wash it in the garage. So you have to turn the car on, move it out, and you have to buckle the seatbelt up to do that. During the winter time, you want to warm the engine up before you start on your trip or drive somewhere. That takes a few minutes. You have to have the vehicle on, you have to turn it on, let it sit, let it warm up. And just moving the car out of the garage to make room for whatever you're doing inside the garage required you to buckle up as well in order to move the vehicle. Now, these were very minor inconveniences relative to what could happen if you're in an automobile accident and you don't have a seatbelt on. That's a much more serious situation compared to that. These are very minor inconveniences, but they were enough to get a lot of motorists to actually learn how to disable the interlock system. According to data, the rate of seatbelt use did increase under this mandate, but people were so upset about it because of these little things they could not do until they buckled their seatbelts up that they complained to their legislators over these complications, and they ended up repealing this mandate in 1974, only a few months after it was required. And that's because far too many Americans viewed these devices as inconveniences instead of lifesavers. And actually, that is a very accurate perception considering what percentage of Americans will actually be killed in an automobile accident. As of 2017, the highway fatality rate in America was around 1/100th of 1%. So that is 0.01% of Americans as of a couple years ago. And really, it's been consistent throughout the last several years. You're only talking about maybe 100th or 200ths of a percent of Americans who are killed in automobile accidents each year in America. So most people, knowing they are never going to even be in an accident, much less killed in one, said, this is only inconveniencing me. This is not saving my life because I'll never get in a crash, and I have to do this. I have to maybe buckle up both front seats just to move the car a few feet or have it warm up before I'm going on a trip in the wintertime. So as a result, this law, well intended, could not last because it was an attempt to force safety on people. By the way, Ford Motor Company found out that they cannot, decades ago, before this interlock controversy, Ford Motor Company actually developed a vehicle called the Lifeguard package, which included seatbelts, airbags, and a padded dashboard, and other safety features. It did not sell. This car was a failure in the marketplace because people were not trying to purchase safety. They wanted a car that looked good and rode good and did what automobiles were expected to do. Safety just wasn't that big of a deal. So forcing safety on people is not something that works, and we tried this in the 70s and it failed. So I believe, and I hope this is true, that it will also fail in Michigan, because in Michigan the interlock device is going to require a breathalyzer to be passed, and the legal limit is also being proposed to be lowered, making it more difficult to pass a breathalyzer. So you don't have to drink that much in order to actually lock yourself out of your own car. If you're out at a restaurant, you might not be able to get home. You might have to call someone, even though your car is right there in the parking lot, because the legal limit has been lowered to 0.05 if the bill passes. And if there's an interlock device requiring you to pass the legal limit, to be within the legal limit, you might be pretty much stuck. So one thing we need to know is that if not enough people are affected by an issue, attempting to change the law in such a way that the new law affects nearly everyone is certain to inspire resistance and sometimes lead to the downfall of the new law. This is exactly what happened in the 70s. Too few people were in fear of dying in automobile accidents back then, and too many of them were hindered by the reduced ease of use of their vehicles under the interlock mandate. So even though it was well intended, designed to save lives, public resistance against it was swift, and it ended the interlock mandate only a few months later. It's still a question of whether or not Michiganders are going to accept or reject this idea. It's been tried before throughout the country. This time, it's not going to be based on seatbelts, but on blood alcohol content. And the blood alcohol content legal limit is also being lowered to make it even more strict. So my hope is that the people of Michigan reject this idea, and as anyone who believes in individual liberty would do so. What makes this country great is the freedom to live our lives any way we want even if it means putting ourselves at risk. What you're not allowed to do is put other people at risk or impose yourself on someone else's life. That is not something that is about individual liberty, because then you're violating their liberty. But to prevent yourself from putting yourself in danger, that is not something that should be prohibited. If you want to be a fool, you should be allowed to be a fool. As far as trying to prevent drunk driving accidents, if you want to believe in forced breathalyzer tests, then why don't you also go all the way and say, let's just take automobiles off the road? That way no one will ever get killed in an automobile accident. I promise you no one will die in a car crash if you don't have cars. Or you could say if someone is convicted of a DUI, life in prison. Then they'll never be back on the road again. I think once you start to propose these ideas, you realize how foolish it is to try to force safety on people. So the interlock bill being proposed, I am hoping for it to be a failure. Not because I don't want to prevent drunk driving, but I do not believe in the idea of forcing devices inside vehicles as a means of preventing people from using them if they do not satisfy conditions that are set by politicians. We need to understand that responsibility is the best way to prevent the loss of life and injury on the roadways. And if someone chooses not to follow that and they commit a crime and they do harm to others, then they should be held responsible to the fullest extent of the law. Thanks for watching. Please subscribe to the YouTube channel Libertarian Black Man and follow the Twitter page Libertarian Black Man, and we hope to see you in the next video.